Can we identify or quantify that thing that makes a place feel holy? Is there a place for the hand and the heart of man to reflect and glorify God's order, His commandments, and His love? Is it a duty to do so? To all these questions, my answer is yes. Recent studies confirm what we already thought likely. Even cave paintings are religious in nature, presenting paradise-like fields of bounty and sacrifices, using symbolic language. Every religion for which we have a record has registered this great gap between the sacred, the realm of the gods, and the profane, our everyday world. This urging to fill the gap between us and our source is coeval with the human race. Indeed, sacred sites everywhere, caves, forests, or buildings, have had their sacred character guarded or transformed from one civilization to another. Here the Roman Pantheon, now St. Mary of the Martyrs. Here the humble church complex of Cholula, atop the largest pyramid of the world, in Mexico, thousands of years old when the Spanish first brought salvation to the New World. Here consider the Cathedral of Syracuse in Sicily, built within the shell of an ancient Greek temple. But the Greek temple itself is built on an even older site, dating to prehistory. Nobody knows how far back it goes, but for as far back as it goes, it's been considered a sacred site. This awareness of the sacred realm is universal to mankind, and mapping heaven on earth, making the architecture represent all of earth, and setting it to interact with the celestial bodies is a constant as well. The architecture of the great cathedrals almost always maps an astronomical reality on the surface of the earth. In Chartres, the building serves as a calendar, which traces the course of the earth through space around the sun and the moon's cycle around the earth. Calendars of Saturn and Jupiter and other planets are mapped in other great churches. The bronze columns of Jupiter's temple in Rome today frame St. John Lateran's Holy of Holies, seen here. Irrespective of the method, and even when the elements of one religion become the trophies of another, man built magnificent spaces to express the supremacy of certain values whenever he was able to. So we see this need for intimacy with the transcendent, the longing born of this deep chasm. It gives fruit to one of man's greatest achievements, sacred art and architecture. And like music, the sacred isn't an invention, it's a discovery. When we engage with sacred art and architecture, we enter into a grand observatory through which we peer into the realm of the divine. So the objectives of sacred art and architecture writ large are, number one, to represent what is in heaven or in the heavens and bring the heavens down to earth. And two, to make what is on earth, the sacred space on earth, a mirror or a map of heaven. We accomplish this best by employing laws and ratios evident in nature as a pathway for design. We've seen some architectural examples, but here's another interesting representation. Just like with a building, it's the composition that unites heaven and earth by mirroring and relating symbols from one realm to the other. Here we have a fresco, and through its layout, the doctrine espoused becomes crystal clear. It's a treatise in 2 shots of an eye. This is a small cosmogram in the manner that the church building itself is a larger scale, fuller cosmogram. How does such a work do this? I propose that it's by means of 3 main characteristics read together. Sacred art has to be legible, intentional, and unequivocal. For legibility, it answers what? What is the work actually saying at face value? Its gesture, its color, its composition. An example of legibility would be the Thorvaldsen Christ in the Lutheran Cathedral in Copenhagen. An example of illegibility would be the recently installed resurrection scene on the right. The gesture and composition already tells you what's physically happening. A man who should otherwise be dead with mortal wounds showing is alive. In the case of the illegible artwork, none of that is evident. Intentionality. You should be able to ask, why is this here? And the answer should be in some way forthcoming. For example, why is St. Peter's Basilica where it is? Well, because that's where St. Peter was buried. Why did you build this monument? because we believe in these values so much. Purity, or being unequivocal. Now, this building is not finished yet. What do you suppose that it is? That answer has to be as clear as possible without an artist statement. When you ask, what is the object of that work, or who is this art speaking of? It's not a question of style, but a question of substance. Everything about the work of art should support the right ordering of our response to the divine and call us to intimacy with Christ. Crossing the threshold into the church, those values need to communicate that spirit immediately. Thomas Merton says, art seeks to make the mystery of Christ in his church not understandable, but visible and imaginable. Here, we affectionately call this the Bernini effect, the drama of that immediate infusion of spiritual truths that resonate and satisfy that profound longing. This effect isn't an emotional trick, it's a moral achievement. Whether graphic arts or architecture or music, the sacred always evokes the idea of something extraordinary, of something beyond normal. This is why curating the sacred space is a thoughtful and expert process to be undertaken with the utmost care. Nothing can be left to chance, nor to the subjectivity of taste. The job of the creative director and designer is to use pigment, furnishings, finishes, shapes, height, dimensions, to more fully reveal the truths which are most true. A building, a sculpture, a meal we cook will always say something about the value of who it's for. To germinate the narrative of a sacred work of art is to answer the question, what do you want to say? Who do you want to speak of? John Ruskin wrote, great nations write their autobiographies in 3 manuscripts, the book of their deeds, the book of their words, and the book of their art. None of them can be understood without reading the others, but of the 3, the only trustworthy one is the last. So what is it about our time that allows us to feel just fine about worshiping underneath exposed cabling and air conditioning ducts? What's changed about our entries in the manuscript of art? I propose it's because we live in an era of rupture. I want to contrast this to your opportunity to kindle a serious renewal of Christian culture and to ransom the culture at large. If the exercise of the modern era is to redefine man's nature without God and relegate man's spiritual nature to the category of pathology, one of the first means employed is the arts, especially architecture. Here you see phase 1 of a new plan for Paris by Le Corbusier. It called for razing over 2 square miles of the heart of Paris to the ground. This is Penn Station. In 1965, it was one of the greatest buildings in America, the gateway to New York City. But in this rupture, we turned against such poetic achievements. And so we erased noble lines from our civilization's manuscript of art. Do buildings reflect values? Vincent Scully said, through Penn Station, one entered the city like a god. Perhaps it was really too much. One scuttles in now like a rat. Without missing a beat, the same culture that wanted to level Paris was aimed at our church life. We should no longer build places devoted to the worship event, structures that have what is thought of an ecclesiastical character. All that was out. What are the characteristics of modern architecture? Very briefly, the salient characteristics of rupture are these. The mindset must be turned against the past. Function and not beauty is the currency of design. Customized narratives are out, vernacular expressions gone. One size fits all. And so we have a space built not for souls, but for technology. A space such as this isn't just anonymous, it's chronically electronic. Modern architects tell us to erase historic traditions which are meaningful to us. But their approach is in conflict with the human psyche and is irreconcilable with our spiritual nature. I believe we need thoughtful evolution and not radical revolution. Build sacred space designed by the heart of man, because the material world can begin to reveal the divine world to us. And how do we know this? Because the truth of the matter is you know what this is, and that's the thing that works. It's 2020, And the good news is, there is a way up. These are all brand new constructions. This gorgeous neo-Gothic tower, it was built in 2010. The justification today for building beautiful churches is not the past. The justification is because we exist in the time of the resurrection. When a building doesn't apologize for being what it is, it communicates that same courage to those inside it. You have the freedom, the calling, and the opportunity to lead a movement which has begun and has absolutely set us up for success. So how do we move from ideas, a guiding philosophy, to brick and mortar? Through the following images, we can begin the discovery process to find out what a sacred space for you could be, and more importantly, should be. How to align it with your vision, your statement of faith, and your culture going forward. To praise, to form, and to witness. Our role is to contextualize your project according to your values, to define the parameters of your project, to assemble your team, and to represent you as creative directors, managing the implementation of the vision from high concept to every detail of fabrication.